Cold. Silence. Pain. The alien soldier lay motionless, half buried in the snow, its body failing, its vision flickering between darkness and dim, silvery light. The twin moons above had no warmth to give. Every breath it took sent sharp agony through its lungs, and the deep wound in its side oozed thick, dark liquid onto the ice. It had failed. The battle had gone horribly wrong. The others had retreated, their ships disappearing into the sky, leaving only ruin behind. It had tried to reach the extraction point, but the humans had pushed back harder than anyone had expected. And now, stranded, abandoned, the alien was left to die on this wretched planet. A faint crunch of snow. The soldier tensed. Even in its fading state, its instincts screamed. Someone was near. It forced its one working eye open, scanning the darkness. At first, there was nothing, just the cold wind whistling through the broken trees. Then, a shadow moved. The alien barely had the strength to lift its arm, its fingers twitching toward the blade strapped to its side. Human footsteps. Slow. Steady. Coming closer. This was it. The stories were true. Humans took no prisoners. They didn't leave enemies behind. They were ruthless survivors, always pressing forward, never surrendering. The alien clenched its jaw, expecting the sharp crack of a weapon, the searing pain of a final blow. But it never came. Instead, the human stopped a few feet away, standing over the broken body of its enemy. Even through blurred vision, the alien could make out the figure, broad-shouldered, wearing thick winter gear, breath curling in the freezing air. It wasn't a soldier. No armor, no weapon in hand. Just an ordinary human. The alien struggled to move, but the pain was too much. Its vision swam again. The human crouched down, tilting its head, observing. And then, to the alien's absolute disbelief, the human reached out. Not with a weapon. Not with aggression. But with something else. Confusion clouded the alien's thoughts. What was this? A trick? A test? Why wasn't it being finished off? It flinched as the human pressed something against its side, fabric. It was stopping the bleeding. The alien was too weak to resist, too cold to think. The human muttered something, voice low and calm, though the alien couldn't understand the words. A rough but gentle hand touched its forehead for just a moment before the human pulled back. Darkness threatened to take over again. The last thing the alien saw, before slipping into unconsciousness, was the human pulling off his coat and wrapping it around the dying enemy. This was not how it was supposed to end. Warmth. The alien's mind floated between reality and unconsciousness, drifting in and out of awareness. It was no longer in the freezing snow, no longer at death's door. There was warmth, heat pressing against its skin, a heavy weight covering its body. It should have been comforting, but instead, it set off alarms in the alien's head. Something was wrong. The soldier's eyes snapped open, its body tensing as instincts took over. It tried to push itself up, but pain lanced through its side, forcing it to collapse back onto the surface beneath it. Soft. Not ice. Not metal. Something strange. The room around it was dimly lit, flickering shadows dancing across wooden walls. A small fire crackled in a stone enclosure across the room, sending waves of heat that made the alien's skin feel feverish. Above, a ceiling, not sky, not a ship, but something solid and unmoving. This was not a prison. It was a shelter. A human dwelling. Panic surged through the alien's mind. Captured. I've been captured. It struggled, trying to move, but something heavy was wrapped around its form. It yanked at the thick, scratchy material, realizing it wasn't a restraint but some sort of covering, fabric? A blanket? Its species didn't use such primitive things. Then it saw him. The human sat nearby, hunched over a small table, his back turned. He was pulling apart something with his hands, food, the alien realized. A scent filled the air, warm and unfamiliar. This must be a trick. Humans were warriors, conquerors, survivors. This soldier had fought against them. It had expected death. Not this. Never this. The alien forced its voice to work, but the words that came out were dry, cracked, almost unrecognizable. Why? The human turned. For the first time, the alien saw his face clearly, rough, lined with age and weather, yet strangely calm. Not a young warrior, not a battle-hardened killer. Just a man. A single human. You're awake. The human's voice was deep, steady. He set down the food and walked closer, slow and careful, as if approaching a wounded animal. Because that's exactly what I am to him, isn't it? The alien flinched as the human knelt beside the cot. He reached for something near the alien's side, and the soldier's muscles tensed. It expected a weapon, perhaps a knife, a needle, something to finish the job. Instead, the human picked up a damp cloth and pressed it gently against the alien's wound. The soldier froze. No malice. No aggression. The human was cleaning the wound, as if it were a mere injury and not a symbol of war. I don't know if you can understand me, the man murmured, voice quiet, but if you do, I'm not gonna hurt you. You're safe here. Safe? The alien's mind recoiled. There was no safe between enemies. No safe in war. Yet, somehow, in this moment, surrounded by warmth and quiet, the human's words almost felt real. But it couldn't be. The alien's body trembled as exhaustion crept in again. It wasn't sure if it was from pain, blood loss, or the simple confusion of everything that had happened. One thought lingered as darkness pulled it under again. Humans aren't supposed to be like this. The alien stirred, consciousness returning in sluggish waves. The warmth was still there. The crackling fire. The scent of unfamiliar food. The weight of the thick covering over its body. For the first time since the crash, it wasn't freezing. But that didn't mean it was safe. It shifted, testing its wounds. The pain was still sharp, but manageable. Slowly, carefully, it opened its eyes. The human was still there. Sitting across the room, the man was sharpening a blade, a long, gleaming piece of metal. The alien's body tensed. There it is. The weapon. The moment of betrayal. Yet, the human didn't even glance its way. He hummed, a strange, rhythmic sound, deep and slow. Almost soothing. The alien species had no such thing. No idle sounds. No wasted movements. Everything had a purpose. For several long minutes, the human continued his work, occasionally brushing metal shavings from his hands. The alien forced itself to breathe evenly, watching, waiting. Finally, the human set the knife down and stood. He walked over, holding something. A bowl. He crouched and placed it beside the cot. You should eat. The alien stared at the bowl's contents. Thick liquid, brownish in color, with solid chunks floating within. The scent was strong, earthy, unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. Food. The alien had gone 2 cycles without sustenance. The hunger gnawed at its insides. But it couldn't trust this. It was an old warrior's tactic, gain the enemy's trust, then strike when they were weakest. Still, it reached out. Slowly. Hesitantly. It lifted a trembling handful of the food to its mouth, its ridged fingers unsteady. The human watched, his expression unreadable. Careful. It's hot. The alien paused. Its species could tolerate high temperatures better than humans. The warning was unnecessary. Yet, he still gave it. The first taste was strange. Thick, warm, textured in a way its kind wasn't used to. But not poisoned. Not dangerous. Just food. The alien swallowed, then took another bite. The human let out a short, quiet chuckle. Guess you like it. The alien stiffened. The sound was so unfamiliar, so casual. So unlike the sharp barks of orders from its commanders. The rigid, rehearsed tones of military speech. "What are you?" the alien rasped. The human blinked. "What? You are not warrior. You are not leader." The alien narrowed its eyes. "Yet you do not fear me." "Why?" The human leaned back on his heels, thoughtful. Then he shrugged. "Because you needed help." Help. The alien's mind reeled. It had fought battles on distant moons, seen entire species crushed beneath the weight of war. No one helped the enemy. No one. And yet, this human, this simple, ordinary human, had done just that. The alien finished eating in silence, mind clouded with uncertainty. Everything it had been taught about humans might have been a lie. The fire crackled softly, casting long shadows across the wooden walls. The alien sat upright now, its body still weak, but recovering. The thick fabric, the human's blanket, was still wrapped around its shoulders, an unnecessary comfort that it had yet to discard. The human moved about the cabin, clearing away the empty bowl, humming that same odd tune. The alien watched, unable to look away. So casual. So unguarded. It was unsettling. "How long?" The alien's voice was hoarse. The human glanced back. "How long what? How long have I been here?" 2 days. The alien's mind spun. 2 whole days? It had been unconscious for that long? And still alive? This made no sense. It should have been locked in a containment cell, interrogated for information, or worse. Yet, instead, it was here, healing, eating, wrapped in warmth. The human was an enigma. And the alien didn't trust enigmas. Its fingers curled instinctively, feeling for the blade that should have been strapped to its side. "Gone." The human noticed. "Your weapon's over there," he said, nodding toward a small wooden shelf. "Didn't want you waking up and stabbing me, you know?" The alien stiffened. So, he did understand the risk. He knew what I was. What I could do. Yet, he had left the weapon within reach. The human settled into a chair across the room, stretching his legs, watching the fire. "You got a name?" he asked, not looking at the alien directly. The soldier hesitated. Names were not meant for enemies. But was this human truly an enemy? It opened its mouth, then stopped. Saying its name felt like lowering a shield. Like admitting something had changed. Instead, it simply asked, "Who are you?" The human exhaled, running a hand through his graying hair. "Just a man." Vague. Unhelpful. The alien studied him. He was older than expected, his face weathered but not hardened. His hands were calloused, but not the hands of a warrior. No scars from battle, no signs of combat experience. Yet, there was strength there. Not in the way soldiers carried themselves, but in the way survivors did. "Why did you help me?" The human glanced at him, then back at the fire. "Because you needed it." Because you needed it. The alien couldn't comprehend it. It had fought in wars, seen its kind leave the wounded behind for the sake of efficiency. Helping the weak was a waste of resources. Mercy was a weakness. And yet, this human had risked everything, his safety, his home, to help an enemy. The alien's body remained still, but inside, its mind churned. Everything I know about humans might be wrong. But if that was true, what else had it been wrong about? The alien's wounds healed faster than expected. It could sit up now, move its arms without searing pain, and even stand for a few moments before dizziness forced it back down. The human never hovered, never rushed, only offering help when needed. It was confusing. The human was no warrior. No general. No interrogator. And yet, the alien had seen him wield tools with the same precision as a soldier wields a blade. He built, he cooked, He maintained the fire, and he spoke often, mostly to himself, sometimes to the alien, even when he knew there would be no response. The soldier watched him carefully, studying, memorizing. It had always believed humans were chaos incarnate. Unpredictable, relentless, violent. Yet, this one moved through his daily tasks with a quiet rhythm, his actions purposeful. One morning, the human was outside chopping wood when the alien finally gathered the strength to leave the cot. Steadying itself against the doorframe, it watched. Swing. Crack. Split. The human repeated the process over and over, stacking the firewood into neat piles. His breath curled in the cold air, but he seemed unbothered. This was survival. The aliens' people survived differently, through conquest, efficiency, the elimination of anything weak. Yet, here was a species that survived through persistence. Through patience. Through care. The human glanced over and grinned. Didn't think you'd be up so soon. The alien shifted. It was still weak, but standing here, in the open air, was strangely grounding. You do this, every day? It rasped. More or less. The human wiped sweat from his brow. Got to keep the place warm. Wood doesn't chop itself. The alien frowned. You do not have workers? Machines? The human chuckled. Machines break. And I don't have anyone else to do it. Just me. The alien didn't understand. A single being maintaining everything alone? It was inefficient. Illogical. And yet, the human didn't seem resentful of his solitude. There was no bitterness in his voice. Just acceptance. The alien hesitated before speaking again. Why? The human rested the axe against his shoulder, studying the soldier for a moment before answering. Because that's what you do. You take care of things. You take care of things. The alien's mind wrestled with the idea. Its kind took. Conquered. Eliminated threats before they could rise. But humans? Humans tended. The alien lowered its gaze. We were told, you were dangerous. The human exhaled, nodding. Yeah. I bet they said a lot of things about us. He stepped closer, meeting the alien's gaze without fear. But I'll tell you something. Just because someone tells you a story doesn't mean it's true. The alien didn't know how to respond. For the first time, it questioned whether it had ever truly understood the war it was fighting. And if it had ever truly understood humans at all. The alien had started to regain its strength. The dull ache in its side remained, but movement was no longer impossible. It could stand for longer periods, walk without collapsing, even assist with small tasks around the cabin. The human never asked it to help. It simply watched, an amused expression on his face whenever the alien awkwardly attempted something unfamiliar, like lifting firewood or stirring the strange food he cooked. The days blurred together in an odd rhythm of survival. Not war. Not orders. Just existence. Then, one night, something changed. The alien stood outside the cabin, staring at the endless sky. The stars here were different, unfamiliar. Somewhere among them, its people were out there, probably assuming it was dead. Then a light flickered above. Not a star. Not a human aircraft. Something else. Its body tensed. No. The human stepped outside a moment later, rubbing his arms against the cold. You all right? The alien didn't answer. Its mind raced. The light was faint, distant, but it was moving. Scanning. Searching. They had come back for it. It clenched its fists. Its people did not send rescue teams. They sent recovery squads. Or worse. The human followed its gaze, frowning at the sky. Something wrong? The alien turned sharply. You must let me leave. The human raised an eyebrow. What? My people, the alien said, voice urgent. They will find me soon. You must not be here when they arrive. The human studied the sky for a long moment. His expression didn't change, but the alien could sense something in his stance, understanding. Then he simply said, "Not gonna happen." The alien's frustration flared. "You do not understand. They will see you as an obstacle. You will be," the human held up a hand. "Let me get this straight. You're saying they'll come looking for you, and if they find me, I'm dead?" The alien exhaled. "Yes. And if you leave now, they'll take you back?" A pause. A hesitation. Then, yes. The human's expression remained unreadable. He glanced at the cabin, the surrounding forest, then back at the alien. "Well, that's a problem." The alien scowled. "You should not be this calm." The human gave a half-smile. "It's not my first time dealing with trouble." The alien's chest tightened. He didn't understand. Didn't he realize what was coming? The flickering light in the sky grew closer. The human sighed, rolling his shoulders. "Guess we've got some decisions to make." The alien swallowed hard. Because when its people arrived, there would be no mercy. The light in the sky was no longer a distant flicker. It was moving closer, cutting through the night like a blade. The alien's stomach tightened. They had found it. The human stood beside it, hands in his pockets, staring up at the approaching ship with an unreadable expression. He seemed entirely too calm for someone who had just been told he was in danger. The alien turned to him sharply. "You must leave." The human exhaled through his nose. "And let them take you?" "They are my people," the alien said, though the words felt heavier than before. "I have no choice." The human finally looked away from the sky, his gaze steady. "There's always a choice." The alien clenched its fists. "No. There isn't." It knew how this would go. If it refused to comply, it would be labeled a traitor. If it resisted, it would be eliminated. Its kind didn't waste resources on disobedient soldiers. Its own death was one thing. But the human? No. "You do not understand," the alien said, voice firm. "They will see you as an obstacle. You will be removed." The human scratched his chin, considering this. Then, as if the idea had just come to him, he said, "What if they don't see me at all?" The alien frowned. "What?" "You're injured, right?" the human said, gesturing toward the cabin. "They'll expect you to be weak. Vulnerable. If they think you're alone, maybe they won't stick around long enough to ask questions." The alien hesitated. That wasn't entirely wrong. The recovery squads were efficient. If it was still alive, but unable to fight, they would simply retrieve it and leave. But what if they did search? What if they saw the second bed, the extra supplies, the clear evidence that a human had helped it? What if they found him? The ship was descending now, its dark silhouette growing larger against the night sky. The alien had seconds to decide. It turned to the human. "If they see you, they won't," he said. His voice was steady. "Trust me." The alien inhaled sharply. Trust. It was not a word its species used lightly. But here, in this moment, staring at the man who had saved its life, who had cared for an enemy without expecting anything in return. Did it have any other choice? The human clapped a hand on the alien's shoulder, a gesture it still didn't fully understand. "Get inside. I'll make sure they don't find anything." The alien swallowed down its doubt and, for the first time in its life, obeyed an order that wasn't given by its own kind. It stepped into the cabin. The human stayed behind, staring up at the descending ship, expression unreadable. The moment of truth had arrived. The alien crouched inside the cabin, every muscle tense. It could hear the low hum of the descending ship, feel the vibrations in the floor as its people landed just beyond the tree line. They were here. The human moved quickly, gathering the few objects that could reveal his presence, an extra bowl, a second blanket, footprints in the snow. He moved with practiced efficiency, as if he had done this before, though the alien could not understand how. The ship's engines powered down. Silence fell. Then, footsteps. The alien swallowed hard. 4, maybe 5 soldiers. Recovery squads weren't large. They didn't need to be. Their job was simple: retrieve the missing soldier. If necessary, eliminate complications. A voice rang out, sharp and commanding in the alien's native tongue. Unit 621. Respond. The alien's pulse pounded in its ears. This was it. The moment that would decide everything. It took a slow breath, then stepped outside. The night air was freezing, but the ship's lights cast a harsh glow, illuminating the figures waiting at the tree line. Familiar armor. Familiar helmets. Familiar weapons. It's people. And yet, as the alien looked at them, something felt wrong. The lead soldier took a step forward, scanning it with a small device. You are injured. A pause. Then, your locator was offline. Why? The alien hesitated. The truth sat heavy on its tongue. It had been saved by a human. Nursed back to health. Shown kindness that no battlefield had ever taught it. But the truth was dangerous. I crashed. My communicator was damaged. The lie came easier than expected. The lead soldier's visor gleamed. You were alone? The alien forced its body to remain still. This was the moment. One wrong word, one hesitation, and they would search the area. They would find the human. And that was not an option. Yes, it said. I survived on my own. The lead soldier studied it for a long moment. The others shifted slightly, waiting. Finally, the leader nodded. Your ship left you behind. A simple statement. No apology. No sympathy. Just fact. The alien had always known its people viewed soldiers as expendable. But standing here now, after everything it had been through, the weight of it crushed something inside its chest. Humans take care of things. Its people discarded them. The lead soldier turned, already heading back toward the ship. We are returning to base. You will be debriefed. Just like that. No questions. No concern. The alien hesitated, looking back toward the cabin. The wooden walls, the warmth of the fire inside, the human waiting just beyond sight. A choice had to be made. It turned back to its people. Took a step forward. Then another. And then, it stopped. Something inside it rebelled. It had spent its life following orders, obeying without question. But now, as it faced its people, the truth was too loud to ignore. It couldn't go back. It turned on its heel and ran. Not toward the ship. Toward the cabin. The alien's feet pounded against the snow, heart racing. It had made its choice. There was no turning back. Behind it, shouts rang out. The recovery squad hesitated for only a moment before reacting. Traitor. That's what they would call it now. A soldier that defied orders. A soldier that refused to return. But the alien didn't care. It reached the cabin, bursting through the door, chest heaving. The human was already standing, tense, hands gripping the edge of the table. Didn't take long for things to go sideways, huh? The alien spun, pressing its back against the wooden wall. They will not leave me now. I have defied them. The human studied it for a moment, then gave a slow nod. All right. No panic. No questions. Just acceptance. The alien's breathing was ragged. You do not understand. My people, they will not stop. They will return with more soldiers. They will see me as a threat. It swallowed. And you? The human exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I figured. He glanced toward the small window, the distant glow of the ship's lights. So, what now? The alien had no answer. For so long, its path had been clear. Follow orders. Complete the mission. Obey. Now, that certainty was gone. The human watched it carefully, then gestured toward the door. You've got two options. You can keep running, try to disappear. I don't know where you'd go, but if you think you've got a shot, I won't stop you. He paused, then tilted his head. Or, you can stay. The alien's gaze snapped to him. Stay? The human shrugged. Yeah. I mean, it's not like I have a lot of visitors. He smiled, but there was something else behind it. Something deeper. I don't know what's out there waiting for you, but I do know one thing. The alien leaned forward slightly. What? The human's expression turned serious. People aren't just the stories told about them. He tapped his chest. Not mine. Not yours. The words settled heavily in the alien's mind. Its people had told stories about humans. Ruthless. Unforgiving. Dangerous. But this human had been none of those things. And what about itself? A loyal soldier. A warrior. A killer. Was that still true? The alien inhaled deeply. It looked toward the door, the path it had once known. Then, slowly, it looked back at the human. You are a strange species. The human chuckled. You have no idea. For the first time in its life, the alien chose its own path. And it stayed. Because sometimes, the greatest act of defiance was learning how to be something new.